Okay, thanks for joining, everybody. I hope it will be interesting for all of you. The purpose today is to give you a little bit of information about the global weather patterns in the South Pacific. Um, and then moving on to some advice for your weather routing from Mexico or Panama, some itineraries to discover Polynesia. And then I'll talk about the hurricane risk and what you can do to stay safe during your passage and after when you navigate in French Polynesia. So talking about the weather patterns in the Pacific, we first have the current. Um, you can see on the image that we've got currents circling around the South Pacific Ocean. So deep in the south, it's going from west to east. Then it's going north along the South American coast, and it's turning west with the South Equatorial Current. So this has some impacts. First of all, for us in French Polynesia, we have the luck to be in the center of the movement and to have notably the Marquesas Island um, that are close to the top and the Austral Islands close to the bottom, which means that we have fish all year round. Some part of the year, the tuna will be more close to the Marquesas, and in other part of the year, we will be closer to the southern part of French Polynesia. But all the sea life, the fish, the plankton, everything is following those currents. It also has implications for you that are going to cross to French Polynesia, and the current, especially the South Equatorial Current, will play a big part in your routing decision. And last but not least, if you have the chance to stop in Galapagos, you'll discover the fantastic marine life there, and it's in great part because of the fact that different currents meet in the Galapagos. They have both the equatorial countercurrent and the Humboldt current that's gone alongside Peru, meeting in the Galapagos. The swells, the second part of the weather patterns, we have two seasons across the Pacific. They are exactly the same in Hawaii and in Tahiti. So from November to April, we've got northern swell, which is produced by a big storm in the Arctic Ocean. And from May to October, we've got southern swell coming from the low pressure in Antarctica. Uh, and it's exactly symmetrical in Hawaii and Tahiti. So when you see the big swell on the north shore of Oahu at the pipeline, that's when we have the swell on the north shore of Tahiti. And when we have the swell on the south coast of Tahiti, we've got the swell on the south coast of Hawaii. It's important for you to notice that because it will play a role in your routing. And as much as we like to call the Pacific Pacific Ocean, the reality is that these ground swell will meet with the chop created by the trade wind and can sometimes create seas that can be a little bit difficult. The wind patterns. So as you probably all expected, we've got trade winds in the Pacific in the tropical zone. But as you can see on this image, it's not very stable. You can see that there are some variations, especially in the middle of the screen above the two low pressure. And there's a reason to it. So that's a map of the different ocean, and you can see that in the Atlantic, whether you look at the Northern Atlantic or the Southern Atlantic, you have only one high pressure in each. So the trade winds are well established. The trade winds are basically they blow from east to west between the high pressure and the doldrums. Um, so in the Atlantic, once you're below the Azores high, you've got stable trade winds taking you all the way to the Caribbean. In the Pacific, it's a completely different story because the ocean is much bigger and we have two high pressure in the south, one center on Easter Island and one center on Kermadec, which is roughly around New Zealand. That creates a convergence zone. The wind gets colliding between those two high pressure, and that's called the South Pacific Convergence Zone. That's where some of the cyclones are born. But even without talking about hurricanes, you'll see that it has impact on the trade winds. Very often we have shifts in trade winds. So this picture was taken in the Tuamulus, and you can see when you have that kind of skies with some clouds very up in the air and a lot of low clouds, that something is changing. The trade winds are going to be colliding against something else. That's because what's happening is the Kermadec high pressure is moving east. So the Easter Island high pressure is very stable, but the Kermadec high pressure is intermittent. It sometimes disappears. It usually grows on the west of the zone and then it moves east. So you've got in red the South Pacific Convergence Zone that goes from the Solomon Island all the way to the Cook Island. And when the Kermadec eye moves east, it's going to create a wind shift in French Polynesia, which you will see here. So first we start with the normal trade wind blowing from the southeast. Then as the high pressure moves towards the east, you see if you look on the map at the Austral Island and the Cook Island, you see that the wind is going to start turning east, northeast, then north. Then you will be a trough with less pressure. The wind will turn west, and then in the end, it will come from the south with lots of squalls. And after a few days, it will go back to the normal trade wind blowing from the southeast. So roughly, when you're in French Polynesia, every 10 days, you've got a wind shift where the wind will go all the way around the clock and end up back from the southeast. We have two weather seasons that are completely different one from the other. The first one, the winter, is the one you will enjoy if you are thinking about jumping in the coming weeks or months. We have well-established trade winds. The temperature is a little bit cooler, the air is drier, but sometimes we get what we call the maramu, which is when the Kermadec high pressure moves east and is very strong. It's going to compress the isobar between the high pressure and the doldrums, and it will create an acceleration of the southeast trade winds. So the wind will be a little bit cooler because it's coming from the south. You will have frequent squalls and bigger seas because that's going to create 2.5 to 3 meters wave all over French Polynesia. So it happens mostly in July and August. So keep that in mind doing your crossing starting about now from Mexico or Panama. You will have well-established trade winds. The thing that can be a bit nasty is this maramu. Let me show you a video here. So that's now trigger canoe sailing race in the Maramu season, and you can see the kind of wave and wind they have. So they're going between Tahiti and Moorea. It's blowing 30, 35 knots, and there's 3 meters swell. Let me stop that, and I'll be. So that's July and August. We often have the Maramu, but during this whole period, the trade winds are well established. and the swell is coming from the south. Then we've got all summer, November to March, which is all rainy season. The subtropical highs shift south, so the trade winds are less strong. They come more from the northeast, less from the southeast, more from the northeast. And the South Pacific convergence zone lingers all over the southern Cook Island and the Austral. So it brings us more rain and potentially cyclones. So what about planning now that you have this general information? This is a brief overview of the sailing route from either Mexico or Panama to French Polynesia. So going from Mexico to French Polynesia, your average bearing is going to be 227, so rather south, for 2,500 nautical miles, so a little bit over a transatlantic crossing. If you're leaving from Panama, your bearing is going to be more west because you're leaving from way more south than Mexico, and it's going to be 1,000 nautical miles longer. Most people will stop in Galapagos, which is about 840 miles from Panama, and almost on the direct course to Marquesas. So what's the typical planning is people tend to leave Mexico or Panama in March. It's the end of the dry season, so you don't want to stay really longer than after April in Mexico or in Panama, because you'll have more rain, more squall. And if you leave in March, you'll arrive in French Polynesia well after the end of our hurricane season. So that's the typical planning, and it allows you to arrive in Tahiti during the time of the Heiva, which I talked about 2 weeks ago, which is our big dance and singing festival. Getting into more details, what's the typical routing when leaving from Mexico? So the first thing is to wait for well-established easterly flow. You wait until it's really established, and then you sail on a direct course to Marquesas until you reach the intertropical convergence zone. And then you will go directly south, probably motoring. The objective is really to cross the zone as fast as you can. And then on the exit, be careful, you're going to have wind coming from the south before it turns southeast and gets established as the trade wind. So it's really in 3 different legs if you want. But keep in mind that the more west you will go at the start, the smaller the doldrums will be. And once you're in the doldrums, the idea is really to go directly south to cross them as fast as you can. What are the dangers when or the pitfalls when you're leaving from Mexico? One is you might have light winds at the start, so there's no point going until you've got a strong, well-established easterly flow. The other thing you can have and you should be careful about is the tehuano, which are some gales blowing from the northeast, especially across the isthmus of Tehuantepec. So watch out. You can see when these are coming. So avoid them. Just wait a little bit before you go. But also make sure you go with a well-established northeasterly flow. From Panama, it's very different. There you wait for a strong north flow to carry you as south as you can. Then again, same challenge, crossing the doldrums. So you want to go directly south in the doldrums. very important to cross them as soon as you can. And then again, be careful when you exit the doldrums because you will first have southern winds. So you will be facing the wind, and the wind is slowly going to shift to the southeast, signaling that you are in the trade winds. So you see that the route is taking you very close to the Galapagos. That's why it's practical to stop there. Um, Normally, you've done the hardest part of the trip when you arrive in the Galapagos. After that, you'll just have to go a little bit more south to get out of the doldrums, and you'll be in the trade winds. One thing to keep in mind is try not to go too south, so you can keep some of the south equatorial current, which is pushing you towards the west. So the more south you go, the stronger the trade winds will be, but the less current you will have pushing you. What are the pitfalls when leaving from Panama? The first one that you've all heard about on the famous thunderstorms you have, and there it's a good idea not to wait too late in the season. The more you wait in the season past April, the more risk you have of having those big thunderstorms. Um, and really to wait until you've got a strongly established northerly flow. And the second pitfall to avoid is to go west too quickly, and you're gonna kind of stay in the conversion zone all the way to the Marquesas. So you have to go south until you can catch the trade winds. So that was some general advice about your routing from Mexico or Panama. Let's look at what you're gonna do once you are in French Polynesia. I'm gonna show you three kind of itineraries. One that lasts 3 months, which is typically what the non-European sailors will do because unless you've applied for a long stay visa, you can only stay 3 months in French Polynesia. Then another itinerary, which is 6 months long, which is what most Europeans that have come across the Panama Canal will do. And then, just to tempt you, an 18 months itinerary, which you can do if you're European or if you've applied for a long stay visa. Because really, I need to tell you, 3 months is not enough to discover all of French Polynesia. It's the size of Europe. There's 118 islands. So 3 months is not enough. If you can get organized with a long stay visa, or if you're European to stay longer, you'll enjoy it. So 3 months, if you can only do this for a year and keep on sailing towards the west, you will typically leave Mexico mid-March. You will be in Marquesas in April, end of April, and beginning of May. Then you'll go to the Chamorros, and in June and July you will be in the Society Island. Um, in the Marquesas, most people make landfall in Fatuiva. I don't know if you remember from 2 weeks ago. I told you this is not an official port of entry, so you can really only spend a few days. Uh, but it's the most convenient. It's on the road and it's really beautiful. So most people make landfall in Fatuiva. You can spend a couple of days walking to the waterfall, meeting the people, and then you sail to Ivawa to do your clearance. You can also visit Paul Gauguin's house. In front of Ivawa, you've got Tarwata, which is fantastic for snorkeling, for fishing, and just relaxing. The island has beautiful black sand beaches. Um, and then you usually go to Nukuiva to explore the archaeological sites, do a little bit of trekking and horse riding in the island. That's going to take you about a month. Then you'll spend another month in the Chamorros, going to the most famous atolls, which is Fakarava, directly on the route from the Marquesas, with two fantastic passes, the North Pass and the South Pass, for diving, and all the southeast corner of the atoll, which is just paradise for water sport. It's like big sandbars, almost nobody there. It's flat water, and you've got the trade winds, and it's just the water is just transparent and very shallow. Um, you can spend a few days in Toao, which is nearby, or participate in our Pacific Puddle Jump Atoll Adventure, which will take place at the end of May in one of the atolls, which we are still keeping secret. So if you're interested, let us know now, because we won't have space for everybody. We're going to limit to 20 boats. Then once you spend a month in the Chamorro, you will sail to Tahiti. You can make landfall at the Point Venus, which is where Cook stopped to monitor the transit of Venus in front of the sky, and then calculate the distance between Earth and Venus. And then you can go in the marina, in the Papete Marina, to see the Heiva. It's also the best place in French Polynesia to organize boat maintenance and provisioning. If you like surfing, you should definitely go to the southern part of Tahiti to see the big Olympic wave. And then after a few days in Tahiti, you can move on to Moorea. So beginning of July, we will have the Tahiti Moorea sailing rendezvous, which is like a fantastic 3 days adventure. There again, we've got a limited number of space, so book early. You won't regret it. And then after the rendezvous, you can spend a couple of days exploring Moorea on your own, and then sail to the Leeward Island. The one thing is, be careful not to arrive at night, which means don't leave Moorea in the morning hoping you will make it to Huaine before the night, because it never happens. You're better off leaving Moorea at the end of the afternoon, and you'll arrive in Huaine early morning with the sunrise. It's going to be fantastic, magical. The scenery there when you go through the pass is just fascinating, and it's much safer. Also, be very careful with Huaine. The reef extends very far from the island, and unfortunately, each year there are a couple of boats that end up on the reef there, and it's always a disaster. So really, don't arrive at night and stay well clear of the reef. Arrive with the sunrise, so you discover Huaine, you spend a few days there, then you can go to Raiatea to see the Marae Tapu Tapuatea, which, if you remember from 2 weeks ago, is the central point of the ancient Polynesian religion. So from Easter Island to Hawaii to New Zealand, the most sacred place in the Pacific is this temple in Raiatea. Between Raiatea and Taha, the two islands share one lagoon. So it's flat water all the way around, but you've got a big wind acceleration between the island of Raiatea and the island of Taha, which makes it fantastic for windsurfing, kite surfing, wing foiling, and so on. And then in Taha, there's a lot of things to explore. You can see a vanilla plantation, you can see a pearl farm, and then sail to Bora Bora, spend a couple of nights there. They have lots of mooring buoys. There's about 100 mooring boats, so that's enough for everybody, and it's really worth seeing that lagoon. It's kind of the bucket list of the places you must go, even though, frankly, I personally prefer the Chamorros that are less touristy. So if you've got 6 months to sail across Polynesia, well, you're gonna start pretty much at the same time, maybe a little bit early, like late February from Panama. Stop for 3 weeks in almost in Galapagos, and then aim to Marquesas, the Chamorros, and the Society Islands. But in each group of island, you will have more time to spend. So same landfall in Marquesas, but instead of just discovering Fatuiva, Ivawa, Tawata, and Nukuiva, you can also explore Wapu and Wauka, which are very, very remote with very few inhabitants, a lot of wild horses, and just beautiful mountain scenery. In the Chamorros, you'll probably spend more than 2 months, and you will think that it wasn't enough, especially if you've got kids that want to go snorkeling. If you love scuba diving, if you love foiling, it's really paradise, and not on Earth but on the ocean there. Um, so typically, when people spend several months in the Chamorros, they don't just stay in the main atolls of Fakarava, but you can also explore some uninhabited atolls like Tahanea. You can explore Apataki, which has a dry dock if you need. Um, and you can explore Rangiroa and Tikeho, which are kind of away from the main sailing circuit if you want. The tourists there are mostly local people from Tahiti and divers, because Rangiroa, the pass, is considered one of the top 5 diving spots in the world. On your way to Tahiti from Rangiroa or Tikau, you should definitely stop in Makatea. Makatea is very special. It's a raised atoll. So you have to imagine that the coral ring was raised above the sea. It's the weight of Tahiti that is moving the tectonic plate, and it's lifting Makatea. It's 70 meters, 210 feet above the water. So you see this coral, which is 200 feet above the water. It's great for rock climbing, and you will see inside it's covered by jungle. It's quite fascinating. And then people usually tend to spend at least 2 months in the Society Island. There's so much culture to enjoy here. So same thing in Tahiti, but really exploring more the different coast of Tahiti. So spending time in the southern part where the big surf wave is, uh, and spending more times climbing the mountains. Our top mountain, the Aorai, is at 6,500 feet. So it's beautiful hike. Uh, and spending more times in Morea, exploring all the different bays and anchorages there. There's also on the southern side of Morea in Hapiti, there's a beautiful anchorage and a reef break, which is probably one of the easiest if you wanna try your luck at surfing on the reef. It's not as dry as some of the other reefs, so a lot of cruisers actually enjoy going and surfing there in Apiti on the southwestern side of Morea. And then you can spend a lot of time exploring all the anchorages of Waine. Going to the south, it's completely remote. Um, and then spending times in Raiatea and Taha. You can sail all the way around Taha inside the lagoon. Actually, in May, we've got a local sailing race which takes us all around the island inside the coral. So it's really beautiful. It's clear water, it's flat water, and you can really play with the wind because there's high mountains and valleys, so it creates wind shifts. It's quite cool to sail around there. Um, and then you'll go to Bora Bora. You can moor in different sides of the island, and then you shouldn't miss Maupiti. Maupiti is very similar to Bora Bora without the tourist. There's no big hotel there, only a few local places. So it's really paradise. It's Polynesia like it was maybe 60 years ago. Um, you need to be patient because the pass is directly facing south. So if you remember, we are in the southern swell season, um, from April to October. And when the swell gets too big, you cannot enter or exit the Maupiti Pass. So no matter how fast your boat is, you might have to wait in Bora Bora to make sure that there's not too much swell, and then you go to Maupiti. And once you're in Maupiti, you have to wait for a good day without too much swell to exit the atoll. And after Maupiti, you can stop in Mopiha, which is the last island of French Polynesia, where they just have a couple of families living. I think there's less than 30 people living in this island. So they are always very happy to see cruisers bring things like meat in the supermarket in Tahiti. You can buy very good frozen meat that comes from New Zealand. They don't have meat in Mopiha, but they have lobster, so we'll happily trade some lobsters from for some porterhouse steak. And then, because I promised I would make you dream a little bit, if you get your long stay visa, or if you are European and retired and you can spend a long time in French Polynesia, uh, you can do an 18 to 24 months sailing trip around French Polynesia. Um, and if that's the case, maybe the best thing to do is not to aim from the Marquesas, but rather sail straight to the Gambier, which are a little bit more south. And after the Gambier, you will sail all the way across the Tuamotus. So that will enable you to really discover the eastern part of the Tuamotus, where there's almost never any tourist. So the first year you will sail from Panama to the Galapagos, then to the Gambier, then you will sail across the Tuamotus, arrive in Tahiti in September or October. So after the summer holiday, there's a little bit less tourists, and still it's very good weather conditions. And in November, before the start of the rainy season, you will sail northeast to Marquesas, taking advantage of the last trade winds from the southeast to sail to Marquesas. You will spend the season in the Marquesas, so December, January, February. Then in March, you will sail down to the Tuamotus, and so spend more time on the western part of the Tuamotus, because you will have seen the eastern part of the Tuamotus the year before. Remember, there's almost 100 different atolls in the Tuamotus, so 2 years is not enough to see them all. Um, and then in June and July, you will be in the Society Island. This time you will see the Heiva Festival. You can do the Tahiti Mora sailing rendezvous. And you can choose to either sell your boat in French Polynesia. We've got a dedicated brokerage team at SAIL Tahiti, so me and my partners would be very happy to help you with that. Or keep on sailing west. And remember, in the Tahiti Mora sailing rendezvous, we've got people coming from New Zealand, Fiji, Tonga, to tell you about their islands, the infrastructure, what you can see there. So again, preparing for your sailing west from here. Check our website on the Pacific Puddle Jump and on SAIL Tahiti. We've got plenty of info about the islands and about different sailing routes you can use inside French Polynesia. But as I said, if you spend 2 years, you'll probably spend the summer season, so the rainy season in Marquesas, which leads me to the next topic, which are hurricane risk and strategies. Um, so the cyclone season, which we prefer to call the rainy season in Tahiti because we have almost no cyclone, but it goes from November to March, and on average in the eastern South Pacific, so everything that is east from 180 degrees west, which marks the change of one side to the other. So on the eastern side, there's about 6 named events every year. Um, Most of them, or a little bit over half of them, are just tropical storm, and the rest are minor cyclones with a few major cyclones. So you have about one major cyclone in the eastern South Pacific each year. But you've got 3 or 4 tropical storms, and what we observe are quiet periods followed by bursts of activities. So it's not happening during the entire rainy season, which is from November to March. You've got burst of activity, which I'll explain just after. So here I'm comparing the eastern South Pacific, the first one on the left of the screen, and the western South Pacific on the right of the screen. So you'll see that's the probability of having an event in any given day. So February is the heart of the rainy season. And in February, across the eastern South Pacific, there's a 30% chance of having a tropical storm each day of February. Obviously, the storm lasts several days. That's why there are so many. There's not like 28 storms. It's just that any day in February, there's a 30% chance to have a tropical storm. On the Western Pacific, so Fiji and everything that is to the west, the probabilities are much higher. You're going to see that you have more than 30% chances to have a tropical storm in any given day of February. And if you add the probability of having a minor or major cyclone, more than 55% chance of having an event in the western South Pacific in any given day of February. So looking at the map, you can see here that's the number of proper tropical cyclone, proper hurricanes that happen on average every year. And you can see that west of 180 degrees west, so basically west from Fiji, you've got just under one hurricane every year. Same in the Indian Ocean. But as you move east, the probability gets lower and lower. So Tahiti sits at 149 degrees west, Raiatea and Bora Bora at 151 degrees west. So the western part of French Polynesia is really sitting above that 150 degrees west line. West of this line, there is a probability of a hurricane, even though it's very low until you reach Fiji. But east of this line, the probability, the average number of hurricane per year is less than 10%. So why is it like that, and where do those hurricanes take place, and how do they move? There are two places the hurricanes are born. One is the doldrums, so the intertropical convergence zone, and the other one is the South Pacific convergence zone, which we saw at the beginning of the presentation. They usually go southeast, and they happen in bursts of activities. So we usually have very good weather, and then we've got a series of low pressure, and one can evolve in a hurricane. The conditions that create those bursts of activities are very complex. I'm not going to try to explain them all now. It would take hours, and I'm not a scientist, but it's a mix between being in the convergence zone and having some humidity waves coming at a time when a low pressure is forming. And there's different kind of humidity waves. There's the Madden-Julian oscillation, for example, which goes from the west to the east, or closer to the equator, you've got the tropical depression waves, which move from the east to the west. So when one of these humidity wave, which travels slowly over the entire Earth, when it meets the convergence zone, provided you've got a low pressure forming and provided the water temperature is high enough, it will create a tropical storm and potentially a hurricane. The risks are much higher during El Nino years. El Nino years happen when the pressure difference between Peru and Australia is small, which means the trade winds will not blow very hard across the ocean from Peru towards Australia. And that means that all the hot water from the western part of the Pacific Ocean will kind of flow back towards the central Pacific. It will warm up the entire ocean, and that's what will create this added risk. But for you in French Polynesia, um, provided between November and April you don't sail west from French Polynesia, there's almost zero risk. You can see that that's the trajectories of hurricanes over the past decades, and you can see that except for one, they all stayed west of Tahiti, with that trajectory going basically alongside the South Pacific convergence zone. So you can see it's very clear they start on the northwest and often around the Solomon Islands, and they travel towards the southeast, toward the southern Cook Islands, and they stay west from French Polynesia. If we look at French Polynesia in more details, that chart shows you how many hurricane you have, or like in how many years do you have a hurricane happening. When it's white, it means zero. So part of the Chomolus and all of the Marquesas, there's never been a hurricane happening. When it's yellow, light yellow, like around Tahiti, and it means that there's one hurricane every 39 years. And indeed, the last hurricane that hit Tahiti was in 1983. So that's 43 years ago, 43 years since we had a hurricane in Tahiti. The probability is a little bit higher in the Leeward Island. So in Raiatea, Ta, Waine, Bora Bora, then there's potentially one hurricane every 6 to 10 years. And then when you sail west, it increases with some places where it's one every 5 years. And that's inside French Polynesia. We've seen that when you go west and you come closer to Fiji, the probability is more one every year. So what's our conclusion from all that? First of all, remember the cyclone season goes from November to March. So if you leave Mexico or Panama in the coming weeks, you will arrive in French Polynesia way before that. You should avoid sailing west of French Polynesia between November to March. So either you just stay a few months in French Polynesia and you sail west before October, or you decide to spend several seasons in French Polynesia. You can stay in the Society Island. The risk is very low and there's good shelter. Or you can sail back north to the Marquesas, where you will be completely out of the hurricane belt. Um, and that's what a lot of people do. They spend Christmas, New Year, and then February in the Marquesas. Um, where you should be careful is really the Tuamudus. The hurricane risk is very low there, but there is no protection. Again, the Tuamudus are just coral rings, so during the treadwheel season, it's fantastic. You'll have the best scuba diving of your life, the best kite surfing of your life, but during the rainy season, you have to pay attention. Again, there's almost never been hurricanes on the Tuamudus, but it can happen, and in that case, you will not be protected. That's it. Thanks for listening. So the next webinar is going to be on the equipment you need in terms of communication, routing, storage, sales, food, tools, and so on. But thanks for listening today. Feel free to connect with us whenever you want, and I will open it now to questions. So if you want to if you want to write me any question or start your mic, I'll be listening and hopefully giving you good answers.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, David. This is Dennis McGard. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, I have a question. I'm going to be sailing from San Francisco straight to the Marquesas. I'll probably leave about the 1st of March. The
Yeah.
US is no longer providing a clearance document, the ZARP, that is required when you come into French Polynesia. What do you have advice for American sailors who don't have this exit clearance document from the US?
Um, that's a good question, and to be honest, I don't have the answer. Because you need a proof that you left. So I
One
guess
suggestion I have is my logbook will be some amount of proof. A
yeah.
letter from my marina in San Francisco saying I left is also another type of proof. But I just wonder if you had heard this, if you were aware of this.
No, 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 no. It's new to me. I think if you can have a proof, yes, from the marinas. To be honest, I've never seen the administration in French Polynesia really looking at the clearance. I mean, they make the assumption that you arrive on your boat, so you must have left from somewhere. Uh, so I guess if you don't have an official clearance, but you have a document from your marina, your boat is US registered, um, I think it should be fine.
Thank
But
you.
again, I've never
Okay.
seen it's the first time I hear that.
Okay.
Um, Sorry, I can't be more precise, but I guess with like a proof that you've left the US, and if your body is US registered, it should work.
Okay.
So we have a question from James. So late March and early April is in Hello Ken. It's usually in the start of the trade wind season. Um, so it's usually good weather. There is a probability that it will be rainy. It can happen because it's not entirely the end of the rainy season, but let's say it's well after the peak of the rainy season. So the most likely is that you will have kind of light trade winds, potentially a few squalls. It might be a little bit of humidity in the air still, but overall it should be good weather with and you should have the trade winds.
David, I've got a question. John Muntz.
Yeah, hello John.
We're looking at acquiring a vessel that's in Tahiti,
Yeah,
and the vessel's been in Tahiti already for 12 months by May.
yeah,
Um, I understand that the vessel can stay in Polynesian waters for 24 months.
yeah.
We intend to get the long-term visa, the 18-month visa, and like to leave the vessel in French Polynesia during the cyclone season. Um, Question is, how can I extend the period of time that the vessel can stay in Polynesia? I presume I've got to take it out of Polynesia some stage, and where would that be a best place to do that?
Um, there's so your future boat will be able to stay in total 24 months. So pretty much 12 months once you purchase her. Um, you can at the end of the 12 months you can either sail somewhere else and come back, but there's no easy place to go. One solution is to go to the Cook Island. It's 600 miles downwind, but it's easy in the one direction. And on the way back, it's 600 miles directly upwind. So it's not that easy going back to French Polynesia from the Cook. And the other thing is, you need to stay out of French Polynesia for 6 months if you want to get to renew the 2 years period. So what some people do is they sail to Hawaii. It's much further away. It's about 3,000 nautical miles, but it's more or less on a beam reach all the way up to Hawaii, and then on the beam reach again coming back to Tahiti. And if you time it well with the season, you can be in the good season in the two places, because the weather is really opposite from one to the other.
Yes, okay, all right. So the 24-month period is based on the vessel, not the owner's
Yes,
stay, is
exactly,
that correct?
exactly. And then if you decide that you want to stay longer because you have your long stay visa, you can also import the vessel, which will cost you about 7% of the price you paid.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. And they will look if you've bought your boat just a year before you do the import. You'll have to use a custom broker, but they will look at the bill of sale. So you don't need to do a valuation, or if your bill of sale is like 12 months old, they will take that as the basis for the calculation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can see people writing questions. Yeah, that's a tough question, Nick. I would say so Nick's question is thinking of crossing from Patagonia via Easter Island and to French Polynesia. So my advice would be to stay close to the coast with the Humboldt Current. That's gonna take you north, which can be I think around 2 knots, between 1 and 2 knots all the time. So it's a big help. And then once you arrive around somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees south, that's going to be the time where you're going to get the trade wind, and you're going to be able to start sailing west. So just go north at the start, get away from the big storms in the southern oceans, and then around between 25 and 30 degrees south, you should get into the trade wind zone, and then it's going to be downwind all the way. Okay, Ken. So it's a good question. You have to imagine that. So normally, when you arrive in a country, let's say you arrive in Tahiti at the airport, you will have the border police, immigration police, and customs, and they will both check you, stamp your passport, and they're all organized to do that. In the Marquesas, there's no customs nor immigration police. There's just the gendarmerie, which is the military police. And they have two offices, one in Ivawa, one in Nukuiva. In each of these offices, I don't know how many there are, but just a handful of people. officers. So they manage the process. They will do the job of customs and immigration police. They've got a special mandate to do that. And they're very nice. In Fatuiva, there's no police station at all. So the consequences, there's pretty much none, because the probability that somebody would arrest you given there's no police station there is pretty low. But it could happen that customs, they have some boats, so they are mostly based in Tahiti, but sometimes they take the boat and they go all the way to Marquesas. So they're probably not gonna go to Marquesas to find you and put you a fine because you went to Fatuiva instead of Ivawa. But they might go to Marquesas because there's unfortunately a big cocaine traffic in the Pacific, leaving Panama and going to Australia. So in the past months, only the French Navy has seized several tons of cocaine on board big ships. So they do run operations against the drug traffic. And unfortunately, they have nothing else to do the day you're here. They might ask for your boat papers and see you haven't done your clearance, and you'll get a fine. But realistically, the probability is very low. It's just it should be provided you just stop a few days. Everybody understands.
David, I've got another question. It just
Yeah.
relates to storing the vessel during the period November through to March. Marquesas sounds like that'd be an old place to store the boat, but I'm not sure that there's any facilities there. Is that correct?
There are several facilities across French Polynesia. So there's one place in the Marquesas in Ivaoa. There's one big place which is actually run by two separate companies in Raiatea. And there's one place on the south side of Tahiti, actually in between the northern and southern part of Tahiti. But you need to make, and there's one place in Apataki in the Chomolus. You need to book well in advance. So there's no point contacting them now because they will tell you that they're full because it's the rainy season. So a lot of people have stored their boat. But in April, May, people are gonna start putting their boats back in the water. So that's when you should contact them and make a booking. And the best way to do that is of course to send them an email, but also go and sail to the yard with your boat and talk to them directly.
Okay, because I did inquire about Atapaki,
Yeah.
and they came back and said they're not hauling out anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe they're just completely full.
So you're not aware that they've closed down.
Yeah, no, I don't think they closed down because I mean I haven't spoke to them for like a few months, but
It sounded like they weren't doing haul outs anymore.
I'll ask the questions because I know the manager well.
Yeah. Okay. So apart from Atapaki, then Raiatea
Yeah,
is obviously a bit more prone to being closer to a tropical event.
yeah.
There somewhere more east that would sort of be less problematic.
Uh, it depends on the size of your boat. But Taravao, which is in between the two islands of Tahiti, it's TA. I'm gonna write it here. So there's a dry dock there. If you look online, you'll find the contact. The manager is called Ivan. Yeah. Um, and he might have some space. He can't haul out very big catamarans, nor boats that are very deep draft. That's his two
I've got a
limitation.
15-meter cat. Is that too big?
It might be. It might be the easiest for you would probably be Raiatea. And in Raiatea, there's Raiatea. So James, condition in September, it's one of my favorite time of the year. We normally have the trade winds well established, but less chances of having the maramu, which is when the trade winds gets like around 30 knots. Normally September it's really one of the best months. So I don't know if some of you have other questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I'm available by mail or WhatsApp whenever you need. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and I see you in 2 weeks to talk about equipment and hopefully in a couple of months in Tahiti. See you everyone, and
David.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
David.